All right, HOC. This is just a preview of your When the Saints Come Marching In packet, so get ready. All right, what you see in front of you is a timeline that I handed out to B2 and B4 already, and so just a quick review for you. You see that we're in Wave 4, and it's the Age of Exploration, and now we're moving on to Western missionaries coming in. So, a review of what you've already seen. Obviously Zheng He, obviously Portugal and da Gama in the Indian Ocean, the Pope and his proclamations on how to deal with foreign lands, the other Pope with his requerimiento, same thing. So we talked about that already. So now, the thing for you to remember is that when the Ming Dynasty, when the Yongle Emperor died, the successors canceled the Zheng He voyages, and so this begins China's age of isolation, right? The Ming Dynasty isolates. The banned seafaring isolation begins. So now we are on to the readings for the packet. It's still the Ming peak. They're isolated, but they're doing just fine. Their economy is huge. They go into a slight decline in the from like 1600 to 1644, where you see the Qing conquest will begin. The Qing conquest will begin in 1644. So notice though that it's still a peak. We've got a Ming peak and a Qing peak. It's still a peak. Just like the song in UN. So, what is our focus today? When the Saints come marching in. The first thing for you to know is that in 1550, China gives Macau to Portuguese. Where's Macau? This is Canton. Here's Hong Kong. Hong Kong is here. Canton is here. Canton is the provincial capital of the Guangzhou province. And so Guangdong is what we call today, but it's Canton then, right? Hong Kong is, at this point, just a rock. It's totally uninhabited in the Ming Dynasty. This is the first place that the Europeans get their foothold. The Ming gives Macau. It's not an island, unless you consider this whole big part of the Pearl River Delta an island. It's just a little finger of land, obviously at the very farthest extreme possible. It's funny if you look at it, from the capital. So that's where the Portuguese are given this little sliver of land that's walled off. It's actually walled off. So the Portuguese are basically living on a very, very small sliver of land that's walled off. They cannot travel on up into this place. Why not? Because the Canton policy of the Ming Dynasty said that traders from the Indian Ocean can only trade in the port of Canton 6 months out of the year. When they come to Canton, the Canton policy says they must conduct trade outside the city walls. Foreigners are not allowed to enter. It is isolationist. So any foreigners who want to do import and export, they go outside the wall of Canton and they deal with Ming government officials in charge of import and export in the name of the emperor. So that's Macau, that's the Portuguese, there's Canton, where they're only allowed to trade 6 months out of the year. The rest of the time, they're stuck down here, all right? It was not abusive. People who actually worked in Canton found it a very, very nice place to work. The Chinese provided them with all sorts of interpreters and porters to carry their stuff, and servants, and all sorts of things. So they were hospitable, they just also did not want them coming into China. This was, you might ask why. China was having a lot of problems with Japanese pirates at this time, and so the pirates would raid their coastline, so their response was just close the coastline, right? At the same time that the Philippines, that Macau goes to the Portuguese, Spain starts exploring, and they make a colony in Taiwan and in the Philippines. So you see that China, the East China Sea and the South China Sea, are starting to become occupied by colonies of the Europeans. This is the earliest stage of imperialism in East Asia. Following on that, this is the first packet in your reading. Everything that's in red here, the Xavier, this, and this, that's what's in your packet. All right, so now we're previewing your packet. I had you do that really fun, if your heart was right, that really fun Hebrew-Chinese dialogue. Well, here's our first one. St. Francis Xavier is a Jesuit missionary. In the 1550s, he goes to Japan, where he presents the gospel of Jesus Christ to samurai Japanese, heavily influenced, as you learned in the Tang Dynasty, by Confucianism and Taoism and Buddhism. He goes and he explains to them, as a missionary, the gospel of Jesus Christ. You're going to read a letter that he sent to the Vatican saying, this is how these East Asians respond to our gospel, our salvation religion. All right, it's fascinating. You're going to read that, annotate that, and say what you find most interesting about how Japan replied or responded, reacted to Christianity. The questions are on the forums, the new forums that I made. Second, why didn't Xavier go into China? Because it was isolated. So in 1590, this guy, Matteo Ricci, goes into China. He is another Jesuit missionary, and he succeeds in overcoming the isolation and going into the heartland of China, where he starts proselytizing and making churches and all sorts of stuff, until finally, in about 1600, he succeeds in getting the emperor's support to create a Christian church in Beijing, the capital city of the Ming Dynasty. And so you're going to see how he tried to convert Confucian China in the heart of the Ming capital, in the Forbidden City, to Christianity. He dies in 1610. Your focus is again on the forum. How do the Chinese treat him? How do they react to his gospel? How does China react to Christianity? What do they think of it? What do they think of him? How do they treat him? All these questions. What do we see about Chinese civilization? What does he think about Confucianism? Finally, he dies in 1610. 30 years later, the late Ming emperors are as degenerate and corrupt, just weak sons as most dynastic cycles. The last sons, they just become spoiled and corrupt, and so they're overthrown. This time it's the Qing dynasty that overthrows them. They're Manchus from Manchuria, the Jurchen Jins from the northern Song dynasty, the guys that came in and took the north from the Song dynasty, took the Yellow River and created the Jin dynasty during the Song dynasty. They're back. This time they call themselves the Qing when they conquer, and this is China's last dynasty. Song Yuan Ming-Qing, ROC. So ROC is Republic, right? So that's the end of the imperial period. So the Qing dynasty starts in 1644. There are 3 emperors in Chinese history from the Qing dynasty that are loved and amazing. This is the first one, Kangxi. He ruled for 62 years, China's longest-lasting emperor. He is a warrior, Manchurian, semi-nomad, horseback guy, but at the same time, he has to prove to the conquered Chinese that he is Confucian and deserves to have the mandate of heaven and be the son of heaven, all that sort of thing. So watch him try to prove to his Chinese subjects that he is a sage king, he is civilized, and he deserves a mandate. He's amazing. And you will see the rights controversy, where the Christian missionaries who are still in China now in the Qing dynasty, they start having some problems with Confucianism, and so it turns into a big controversy. And Kangxi is going to be sucked into this controversy with the Pope from roughly 1670 or so until 1742. For about 70 years, Kangxi is having debates with his guests, envoys from the Pope. In 1742, you will see that Kangxi decides to expel Christianity from China. He kicks out Christians. No other religion has ever been kicked out of China, only Christianity. So your questions about this are, why? What do you think about this guy? And so forth. So the questions are all in the forum. And so check the blog for a link to that. All right? I hope this helped. Thank you. Bye.